the first moment of sticker shock where I went, how much? And he goes, I mean,
It's just the way.
you want to earn a living, right?
What's up, everybody? My name is Adam, and I'm the host of the UKnowAdamTsang podcast, the show that is dedicated on bringing on passionate people, learning about their stories, and delivering value to entrepreneurs. So if that's what you're interested in, go ahead and follow, like, and subscribe. You know what I'm saying? How's it going, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the UKnowAdamTsang podcast, where you get to know just a little bit more about people, passions, and all things business. Today, I have Mr. William Martin from Southern Exchange Company. Thank you for coming onto the show.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
For those that don't know, what is Southern Exchange?
We're a retailer online and brick and mortar here in Statesboro, selling Georgia Southern University gear for fans.
Yep.
So yeah,
That's awesome.
That's
And-
basically
And you were telling me a little bit before that you've actually been in business for now
6 years.
6 years.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
amazing accomplishment.
Yeah, it's been a great ride so far.
Yeah?
It's been really good. Yeah.
And you guys are right behind the infamous Dingus
Yeah.
McGee's.
We share a wall with Dingus McGee's. That's right.
That's awesome.
Yep.
And, I actually stopped by the store before I reached out to you.
Yeah.
And I was just very impressed with kind of how orderly everything was. And then also like the variety of different items
Yeah.
that are there.
Sure.
So I have to ask you, I guess, how do you guys structure your store, right? Like, how do you decide what items to bring in? You guys are the official merchandiser for
That's right.
Georgia Southern University.
Yep.
And I would assume that means that you guys have access to kind of like, the different prints or the ability to sell those things.
Yeah. The being a partner with the university and with athletics definitely gives us some access to information mainly, and then what we do with that information is up to us. So
Yeah.
we can either choose to ignore it and maybe not have sales, or we can choose to take it and run with it. So typically we take it and run with it.
So this is fascinating for me because, I actually have been by like the school store before,
Yeah.
and I've also seen merchandise in there.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting that that a school system would be willing to kind of open up their, access like to potential revenue.
Sure.
And allow for, a quote unquote outsider to come in
Yeah.
and potentially earn that revenue, right?
Yeah.
So how does that play out, at least in your mind?
Well, when we opened, I had been in the college business.
Okay.
On a production side of things, working for a screen printer and embroiderer
Okay.
in Athens, and we licensed about 80 different schools.
Wow.
Including Georgia Southern.
Okay.
But we sold to retailers
Okay.
is what we did.
Okay.
And one of my jobs there was to visit all the universities that we licensed, scout their retailers, their local retailers, see what they did well, see what they needed some help with, and then come back with reports and things on my findings.
Yeah.
So I had been practicing kind of unknowingly to build a store for a long time before we actually did anything. But to answer your question, the way I look at it, and when we first opened, I was very cognizant of I'm not going to step on anybody's toes. We're going to be something completely different. There is this market is much larger than most people think.
Okay.
And so there's room for people who do different things. Typically, my thinking is when most people think about a university bookstore, it's very conservative. It's very almost corporate in some ways. So there's not a lot of it's
not as punchy.
It's not as punchy. It's just a different animal. And so when we started, we decided we're going to focus on this, and we're going to be as creative as we can, and we're going to offer something different. So in my mind, my thinking is, if you are offering different, if you have a competitive advantage for some reason because you're doing something different, there's room in the market for both. There are people that will only go to the bookstore because that's what they feel comfortable with, and that's their kind of the look and feel of what they want, and that's kind of their first thing. We're different. We try and look at a better way to build a mousetrap every day, and so that's our focus, is just being different and being small and being passionate. Affords us a lot of things that they don't take advantage of, I think. We're pretty energetic. We have a passion for what we do, and so I think that shows in a lot of what we order and bring in, and a lot of that comes from me. And it's just some of it works and some of it doesn't work, but you don't know until you do it. So
that's awesome. One of the things that comes to mind, especially as an entrepreneur, as a businessman, you're often placed against these kind of like David and Goliath type situations, right? Like, the school has all this money, all this budget, that they can really flex. But, as a smaller company, one of the benefits is really being agile and nimble, where you're able to make really quick decisions, where at a corporate type level bookstore, they have to go through so much different levels in order to make one call, right? And so I think that there's definitely stepping into the store versus stepping into kind of Southern Exchange, I think that you can really feel a difference between the energy that's there.
I think so. I like to think so. but to your point, when we first opened, I was very cautious. I was very intimidated. Might not be the right word, but to your point, you have and it's a good thing as a small business to feel like you're the David to somebody's Goliath, because it makes you work harder to achieve and put stuff out there. And so I'd like to think we haven't really lost that. We still feel, and honestly, we have had good working relationships with the bookstore. We've partnered on some programs, awesome. and for buying power sort of thing. We want to try this. Would you guys go in half with us, and let's bring it in and see how it does. So we've done some stuff like that, and I think when we opened. In my business plan, when we started thinking about this, I looked at it, and I've scouted dozens of universities and stores. And you come to Statesboro, and you're not sure, but you look at it, and there's 20,000 students here. There's a bigger student body here than at Clemson that's got 6 independent retailers, plus the bookstore. So there was room. There was room for somebody who's doing something different. It was my feeling, and I think that's proven out to be accurate.
That's awesome. So, you mentioned that you had been scouting all these different schools, and you saw the opportunity. At what point did you make that call and that decision? And take me through that, right? Because I think that it's something that entrepreneurs experience, that moment that you are about to jump off the ledge.
So, my oldest daughter was coming to Georgia Southern. Or was here at Georgia Southern.
She was already here.
Yeah. Through business, I knew the licensing person at Georgia Southern. I had been coming here and doing scouting down here, working with them on other projects. So I knew the area. I knew the place. The spot that we're in that people will know who remember was a company called Barefoot Outfitters. That was next where we are now. And I met the licensing person and her family. We met at Ole Miss for the football game. In 2016. And we just met up to tailgate and have fun and go to the game, all that. And we're talking, waiting on a shuttle to take us to the Grove. And she says, Barefoot moved out. And I said, what? She said, yeah, they within 2 weeks, they're gone.
Just disappeared?
They just decided they're going to go after a bigger market and decided to leave. So they had a sale, sold out of everything, buttoned it up, and left. And we're let's say, enjoying ourselves at a tailgate. And so we're talking, and I said, well, somebody needs to open a store there. Because that's where we would come when we would come into town for games or to visit our daughter or whatever. And she goes, yes, somebody really does need to open a store. And so we joked about it. Over the next couple of months, I would sketch out logo ideas.
Oh, wow.
And, we could do this. What about this? Uh-huh. And I'd send it to her and get her
feedback.
And it started as a joke. Not a joke, but sort of lighthearted. Yeah, somebody should do that.
Yeah.
And then I just decided, I wonder if I can get a hold of the lady that owns that building.
Yeah.
So I reached out and I just said, hey, I'm thinking about something. Can you meet me? And so I drove down to Statesboro and met with her. And, she was nice, older lady who's owned it for a long time. Mm-hmm. And we just started chatting. And then it started moving really fast. And within 2 months, I went home and I asked my wife, and I said, what do you think about going and doing something completely different? Uh-huh. And she said, and we're in Athens, and she said, that sounds great. Uh-huh. Whatever you want to do.
She was supportive.
Oh, yeah.
That's a huge deal.
Oh,
right?
Huge. She knows how I am, and I get itchy after to move on to do something else after a period of time. But she said, we'll do anything you want. That's great. Let's just not move any further south. And I said, well, how about Statesboro? And she said, okay, great. Well,
closer to the daughter.
You can still do it. Yeah, that's not always a positive, but sure.
Okay.
But so anyway, we kind of made that decision, and then within 2 months, we signed a lease. Our youngest daughter graduated high school. We sold our house and moved to Statesboro.
Going back to that moment, so there's a few questions I have in there. Did you think about, a previous person that had done something very similar in terms of like the merchandising and that sort of thing, not doing exceptionally well, and going to kind of like, into that same space? There was kind of like that, I would say, fear, right?
Right.
And then also kind of like that risk, right? Take me back to that moment. What was going through your mind?
So the way I looked at it was, I had two things that I felt pretty good about. One of them was just all the previous experience I'd had on what I know has worked well and what I saw scouting retailers. And the second thing was talking to Connie, who was the licensing person here at Georgia Southern, and saying, is there a reason that Barefoot left besides just wanting to go for a bigger market? And she said, William, they were doing fine. They were doing well. I've seen the reports. They were,
That's so interesting.
And so that made me more confident that it could be done.
Sure.
My dad, who was a CPA in Destin and owned his own business for 40 years, helped me kind of develop the business plan. And what's funny is we came up with the business plan together, and he looked at the numbers, and we looked at things together, and he said, it's workable, but in order to do this and actually survive, this is the number I think you need to make in sales a day. Mm-hmm. And that was the first moment of sticker shock where I went, how much? And he goes, it's
just the way
you want to earn a living, right? And I said, yeah, I'd prefer to be able to pay my electricity if I could. And he said, well, this is the number. Mm-hmm. And that kind of scared me a little bit. Mm-hmm. I thought, and that was kind of the unknown. That was kind of I'm doing the math in wholesale of what T-shirts cost and what I'm selling them for, and thinking that just seems like a crazy number. it wasn't. And I mean, honestly, the first year we opened was 2017, which was the worst, because I thought, oh, it's football season, we'll be good. And then it was the worst football season, in the history of the program. And we survived it. And we got into 2018, and I looked back on 2017 and went, if we made it through that, I think we're going to be fine. And it's, we've grown every year since. So that's all been played out well.
After coming to the market, what were some of the challenges that you faced? Obviously 2017 was kind of like this really interesting time.
Right.
But what kind of like has been the biggest challenge of like opening this business?
Right. The biggest challenge has been probably just the parts that I didn't know. When we opened, we had 12 hats. I'm like, I'm not a hat guy. I don't know anything about any of that. And now we've got 100 different hats. It was sort of the simple stuff. It was, figuring out, buying cash registers from Sam's and setting them up and figuring out an online sales website, setting it up by myself. Everything the first year was all DIY. It was our DIY. And so we built our own displays. We would buy displays when we'd see them on, a Macy's going out of business and buy displays and refurb them and do. So that was a lot of work and a lot of fun, and you didn't really think about. I know I don't have money to go spend on displays for everything to look nice. So how am I going to work this to our advantage? And and I think we still look at things that way. We can certainly do more now, but we still look at it in terms of, the reason it looks, the decor is rustic industrial is because, well, I can afford pipe and I can work with that. I can go buy wood at Howard Lumber and build displays and get a blowtorch and, burn it and make it look different and so, those were the biggest challenges. And now we look back on things, and I'll look back at pictures from 5, 6 years ago, and at the time I thought, my God, we're packed with inventory. And I look now, and it's like maybe a third of what we've got in the store. I don't even know how we put stuff in there that we've got now, but I look back and think about that kind of stuff, and that was really, I think sort of. The not knowing was the biggest challenge, and now it's just kind of managing. Now I get excited about stuff and probably overexcited about things, and the employees will see stuff come in the door and go, "What is this?" Well, but isn't it cool?
Yeah, I think you touched on a really important part of entrepreneurship, which is being scrappy. Of obviously it would be wonderful to get like the $5,000, $10,000 display, but when you don't have necessarily the revenue to spend on that, how are you going to make it work? And I think that entrepreneurship always comes back to this of like, hey, like it's tight right now. We have to figure out some sort of like solution to that. It's problem solving,
right?
And the fact that like you mentioned another word in there, which was fun. Right. Yeah. Like I think that those elements placed together of figuring out the challenges, working through the challenges, and ending up with a product that maybe is even superior than buying the display is a lot more rewarding.
Well, I think you can probably attest to this as well. I mentioned before, I kind of get itchy after a few years of I need to do something different. I need to either move or I need to something else. The thing about what we're doing, and I think you're probably the same way, there's always something new. So the challenges never end, and the change. And I love change, anything. And it's, you think about, we've been open 6 years, and if you think about the ups and downs just in the general marketplace. Talk about COVID and and how do you get through all that? And it's like, I would tell, people would complain, students would complain, oh, I'm graduating, but it's 2020 and we're not walking. And it's like, but you've got a great story to tell.
That's right.
You've got a great resume builder. You came through it with this and survived, and you did all this and these challenges. That's great. That's good stuff.
Yep.
It's all storytelling.
Yep.
And that building a story and being able to tell that is important, and people love it.
So let's segue into that.
Okay.
Tell me about, was business and owning your own business always part of the plan?
I had been thinking about it for a long time, and I thought about different things. But it's one of those where you have to be open when you see the opportunity. At least that's what I think. And so for years, I had thought about doing something different and owning something, but I didn't know really what that was going to be. And so when the opportunity arose, it's just, you kind of have to put blinders on and
go for it.
Yeah. Assume that, good things are going to happen. Nobody's going to outwork me.
Yeah. Ooh.
They're just not.
That's good.
And so,
where's that come from?
If I fail, if it had failed, my thinking in the back of my head was, if this fails, I'm going to have no problem getting a job somewhere. I can go right back to what I was doing, or I can go do something else within the industry. I never really worried about that. I worried about uprooting everybody and going, okay, we're going to do this, and kind of everybody else. But as far as me and, do you survive or whatever financially, that was really I never really thought about that too much.
Well, so you mentioned this, no one's going to outwork me type mentality, and I love that mentality. I think that's kind of like the grit, right? Like
sure.
the taking each day and like seizing the day and kind of like going after every single opportunity. How was that constructed into your ethos, right? Like as a individual, did that come from work? Did that come from a young age? Where was that from?
Yeah, I'm pretty firm in my belief that everybody is kind of hardwired from the start to be a certain way. And not to say that I don't think you can change radically. I think you can choose to not do certain things or do other things that are important or different. And so I think my family and my grandparents and, they all came from people that were, for lack of a better term, workaholics. They just love
is in the family
work.
Yeah.
And so my dad, kind of your classic type A, he got out of the military, decided he was going to be a CPA, went to school for it. So he went to school full time, worked nights to support his family, and did all that. And then, I never thought, he was retired now, but I never thought he would retire. He just was that way.
Yeah.
And so I don't think I realized that until I kind of had been but I had been working since I was mowing grass at 12 for people, and then it just kind of grows from there. And then you see people that don't really have that same. I'm of the opinion that nobody works as hard as they can work. There's always more you can give.
Sure.
Is it always a good thing to do that? No, not necessarily. But do I work the hardest I can? No, but I don't think anybody does. So I just, but like when we started Southern Exchange, my thinking and my goal was, and it kind of led to us being partners with athletics, was, I mentioned nobody's going to outwork us. Well, if athletics came to me with, hey, we're thinking about doing this. Would you be interested in, this was before we were partners. Anytime I could get my foot in the door, they offered an opportunity to do something, even tangentially along with them. I was like, yeah, I'll do whatever you want me to. I'll set up, I'll go anywhere. You just tell me what you need and I'll do it. And so that was the mindset. We're going to be, the goal is when you walk in the door, we can be a welcome center. We can be information. You need to know what GATA means. We can tell you that. You know, where do you want to go have lunch? Here's some options. You know, and then I'll tell you about these shirts if you want, or I'll help you do whatever. So that was the goal. And that's what we try and instill in everybody who works for us too.
How big is your team since the beginning versus what it is now?
In the beginning, it was basically me, my wife, and actually a guy who, and my daughters, who were both in school here too. Of course, family help.
Pulled them into it.
And then we had hired a young man who was managing Barefoot, actually.
Oh, really?
When they closed.
Okay.
So he was there when they closed.
Came with the building.
Yeah, that's right. And so I'm not sure even how I got in touch with him, but he was like, and so he was really good at saying, you know, you should probably try bringing this in because it did really well for us when we were here, you know. And that was helpful. But that was pretty much it at the time.
And then what is it now? How many people on the team?
We have 5 employees now. But that fluctuates some depending on season and what we're doing. We'll have more help in the fall and football games and things like that.
I've seen some really unique products come out of kind of like your guys' space. One of that comes to mind is I believe I've seen a trailer with kind of like merchandised out. That's kind of like fun to see at the baseball games and that sort of thing. If memory serves me right, I don't believe that the space has increased since you've taken over. Has it not? No? Okay, I'm just kidding. I thought that the left,
You're right. It has.
Okay. I was like,
I'm thinking. When you say that, I'm thinking we really need more space. If I could double that space, I would do it in a heartbeat because we could fill it up.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right. The space to the left as you're walking in. Before we opened, it was a coffee shop for a minute.
I remember that.
And then it was a trophy shop.
Yep, I remember that as well.
And then they left, and so we just were busting at the seams. So we just worked out a deal with the person who owned the building, and that walkthrough was actually already there.
Yeah.
It had just been made into shelving or whatever, so we just busted through that and kind of built out that room, and then there's a bunch of stock in the back too. So it's next time you're in, I'll take you back there. It's not as organized as I'd like it to be, but it never will be. So, but yeah, it's loaded up.
How many different SKUs? And SKUs are different items, right? For the audience that maybe isn't as familiar with the terminology, how many different items do you carry at a time?
Boy, good question.
Roughly,
I would say it's got to be close to 500. I'm thinking 100 different hats.
Okay.
So then you pop, apparel and gifts, and it's probably more than that. So,
got you.
Yeah.
And then
then sizes and all that good stuff. So.
That's right. And so with all those like different SKUs, you mentioned that you're selling online as well.
Yep.
Okay. And where do people go for that?
It's just southernexchangecompany.com.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then for kind of like the shopping experience, I care a lot about when people walk into a business, the way that they feel, as well as like, when they leave. For the experience that you want to create at this space, what is the feeling that you want people to have?
The goal is, and I said before, I really want to come across as, we're a welcome center. As Georgia Southern University does, Southern Exchange does. So we want to be more informative than anybody else. And so there's that piece, but also and I tell our folks that work there, I want you to welcome everybody as they come in, tell everyone hello. But I don't want to be one of the retailers that also follow people around, and the hard sell is not my thing.
Yeah.
Let them do their thing.
Yep.
Follow up if they need help, but let it breathe,
Yeah.
And then no one does this as well as I'd like them to, but this is, and as a business owner, nobody's going to do it as well as you would do it in your head.
That's right.
But and they would say I do this too much, but I also like building relationships with our customers. And some people, don't feel great about that. Not that they don't feel great, but but I love to hear where people come from, what they're doing in town. Where are you having, like I said, where are you having lunch? Building conversations, finding out people's stories.
Huge.
That's super, for me. When I travel somewhere, that's the best part about travel. I don't care where I go. I want to talk to people and find out what their story is. We talked just before we started about your background and how you wound up in Statesboro, and that kind of stuff. That's where the juice is.
I agree.
And so we get to know parents and we get to know students, but player parents, coaches. I don't take up a ton of their time, but I do like to find out, how's your day? What are you doing? How's the new house coming along? Whatever. And it's the same with any customer. I call them the friends of SXC because I like the relationship building part of that. And I think that's huge. And I don't think you get that at most retailers, corporate or otherwise. I would love it if we would pull more information from people, as they, not in a we're collecting information situation, because I don't do a good job at that, but more, I want to know about you. I want to know your story. Where, what brought you? You're Michigan. How did you find out about Georgia Southern? Whatever it is. So,
I think that's actually a area that any business, regardless of how big or how small, is an opportunity to really grow.
Yeah.
In a world that it's so digital, like we have our phones at our side at any given time. To me, I think what it's really done is pushed us away from each other, and that human connection, that customer service, is an element that is starting to become less and less prevalent, right? I
agree with you.
I went to a coffee shop, and I'll share this with you because, this was one of the most. It stood out to me, and I've talked about it with my teams as well. But I went to a coffee shop up in Alpharetta called Valor. They're a specialty coffee shop, and what stood out to me was not only did they have a great product, the coffee was really good, but when I went to the cashier, they asked me, they introduced themselves, and they also asked my name. So typically, what you do is like, oh, what's the name for the order, right? And then they just take it down, and there's nothing after that. And I thought that was like, oh, okay, that's interesting. Sure. Like they introduced themselves, but then when I went to go pick up my coffee, the person that was handing the coffee also did the exact same thing, and that's been like literally in the back of my mind. Like I spoke with my teams. I was like, that was something special, and it was so simple, right? Yeah. It's so simple. Yeah. It's just simply hey, my name is right.
So yeah, I love that.
Yeah,
and we get feedback and compliments all the time, and it's a former boss of mine had a saying that I love, and it's pretty simple, but it's never pass up a chance to be a hero. And that doesn't mean anything brave necessarily, but how do you impress upon somebody you're doing something kind of above and beyond? And so with every online order, we put a handwritten note in there that says, "Thanks, Adam, GATA, Abby."
Yeah.
Or whoever, and we have it come from the individual person
that's packing
who's packing
That's
the
awesome.
order.
That's awesome.
And so, and then we wrap it up and we put that in there, and it's such a simple, low cost thing.
Yep.
It doesn't really cost us anything other than a couple of minutes and whatever the cost of a card. But people, you're absolutely right. How much would it take for any retailer or any corporation to add that to their, and you would get it and go, oh, wow, that's cool.
The human touch.
Yeah.
It's such a...
we have, we actually, the employees started an employee Southern Exchange Instagram.
Okay.
Called SXC Unfiltered.
Okay.
And, they asked if they could do it. And I said, don't do anything offensive.
Okay.
Don't do anything that touches on religion, politics, whatever.
Yep.
You guys have as much fun as you want.
Yeah.
Take pictures, post it. And so we have customers who know individual employees when they come in. They know their name.
Yeah.
They've seen them on whatever our social media. And they relate to them. And, you're not only are you getting input from your employees and they've bought into that personal touch.
That's right.
But it's the customers love it.
That's right.
That just what you were saying.
Yeah. What's on the future? What's on the horizon for your company?
Good question. The biggest thing that we're kind of grappling with right now and trying to figure out exactly what we're going to do. I've got an idea, but the name, image, likeness, the NIL with players, and working with the Eagle Nation Collective for all that. It's kind of it's been around now for a year and a half, 2 years.
Sure.
In name and ability, but everybody's still kind of wrestling with exactly how this thing works. So one thing we're looking at is getting into some personalization.
Gotcha.
So not only with players, and I've got kind of a plan in the back of my head about how that's going to work, and we're getting closer. So I would say first part of next year, spring, I would say we're going to be ready to roll on some of that stuff. But maybe even personalization, Adam's Tailgate with Georgia Southern logos and things like that people could order either in store or online. Again, the personal touch in being able to supply or give people something that they can't easily get elsewhere. I don't think a Walmart has put a well-run True Value out of business. And I think the reason for that is I can go into a True Value and go, I need this specific thing. They'll tell you, and they'll have an opinion on why you need stainless steel as opposed to
100%.
Whatever. You're not going, I don't care what the buying power is at Walmart or whatever discounter, you're not going to get that level of service. And that's how I think about what we do. As small business owners, we provide something that you can't get, no matter what the cost is.
Yeah. How do people keep in touch? Website, give me Instagram handles, social media.
Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook are all SXC Statesboro.
Okay.
The website, Southern Exchange Company, all spelled out, .com. TikTok is also SXC Statesboro. That's also an employee-run situation. So it'll be we actually, one of our employees is doing an internship with Racetrack in Atlanta this summer. But she's going to be coming back, and she's kind of our driver of our TikTok. So that'll be ramping back up, I think, in the next couple weeks.
That's amazing.
So I'm sure she'll have plenty of good insights to share.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for coming on to the show. It was a pleasure to hear a little bit more about your story. I think that, being able to identify and actually using foundational knowledge, right? You worked at a company that was literally scouting and kind of like identifying the gaps within a market. And the fact that, when the opportunity came, you seized it, and now you've been here for 6 years, continue to crush it. That's absolutely the story that I encourage people to hear and learn from, right? As an entrepreneur, like I think a lot of us work hard, and not always is that opportunity in front of us. But if you know where to look, it will come.
Yeah, absolutely.
So thank you so much for coming on to the show.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.